What's going on, people, and welcome back to the North London Gooner podcast. It's been a minute. Make sure to like if you like it and make sure to sub if you love it to be a part of the NLG fam. You know what it is. And Arsenal faced United today at Old Trafford, and it resulted in a 1-1 snorefest. And we're going to go to Non-Techie in France today to find out their thoughts on the game and really, I guess, look at the rest of the season. Honestly, the games we've been having recently. Just to end my spiel, I went to the Sidemen charity match yesterday. Amazing show out, incredible match. The Sidemen I don't even watch, wasn't watching too much growing up, but to think they sold out Wembley, a stadium we couldn't get to this year, and have a more entertaining match with people who are completely inexperienced to football. So big up the Sidemen, honestly, and we had to endure 90 minutes of madness. So with that all being said, how are you two doing? Non-Techie, let's start with you.
Oh, doing okay. I think even the most optimistic, ardent fan could probably look at this season and think, well, look, we're not going to win it. So let's just do our best with regards to, finishing in these Champions League spots and then hopefully steering clear of City and Forest. But even then, our performances aren't really leaving us inspired. So yeah, wasn't expecting much going into the match. And there wasn't too much to come out of it. I'm just glad we didn't lose, but I think that's like faint consolation for us.
Yeah, it is for sure in France. What are you saying? And a quick summary of thoughts on the match as a whole and the season.
Doing well. Just with regards to everything going on in terms of the season, etc., I think we have seen the sort of flat trajectory of Arsenal this season. We have I think most people have acknowledged consciously or subconsciously that there isn't going to be anything further coming out of the season. We've dropped out of all the cups. We know Liverpool's basically taking it, running away with it. So there wasn't any sort of great expectation from me. I mean, even if we won this one, we're not going any further in terms of catching Liverpool. And that's based on performances, not based on anything to do with injuries or anything else like that. It's pure performance. So yeah, expected, to be honest, relatively expected.
Yeah, and what else I find that's expected as well is, I predicted a 1-1. Funny story. After the Sidemen charity match, I was leaving the stadium and two mums came up to me and were like, can our kids get a picture of you? And my brain went through a quick thing where I was like, "Wow, do I play this or did I just say I'm actually a nobody?" So the kids were already walking over, so I was like, "You know what? We're taking pictures." So I got talking to the mums anyway. They took pictures with me. The kids took pictures with me, and then the mums did. One of the mums was a Liverpool fan, the other one was a United fan. And they're like, "Oh, what do you think the score will be?" I was like, 1-1, and they were like, "Yeah, but PSV, you beat them 7-1." And I said, yeah, but Arsenal really, in the Premier League, we drop our level to the teams below us for some reason. We have a decent enough record against maybe the top 3-4 teams. And then the rest of them, we drop our level and can't break things down. United, in my opinion, played more or less the same way they played against us in the FA Cup final. And or the same way you should play against Arsenal if you play them in this day and age, which is you basically try nullify, sit, counter, or get a set piece. Today, set piece FC was United, and we really the game was back and forth, no energy, moving the ball around, possession, but no execution. France, the league may be done, but and there's no cups to go for. But what would you have liked to see from, Arsenal in that game? Because the first half, go through some of the first half moments for me. Obviously, Bruno gets a goal, set piece, free kick. But what else did we show today?
Interestingly, I think in the first half, we showed a bit more of a snappy set of passing arrangements. We showed a bit more drive to get forward. And this is something that I generally would consider promising because Arsenal have been much slower, much more determined for every pass to be more metered, more considered. over our past few games this season. So this should have been a positive. I know in the last few, like when we played PSV, there was a lot more snappiness, and that's what I kind of wanted to see continue. So coming into it, I thought to myself, well, this looks like a positive scenario for us, but our ability to break them down was near non-existent. Then we see this Bruno Fernandes free kick scenario occur, and what's interesting about it is, again, we know that the referee seemed to put the line a bit further back than it should have been. This creates more space for a free kick taker to basically have the ball go right up and over the wall, and then take enough of a distance for it to dip before it actually the goal. However, we also see that Raya does this thing. I mean, we were talking about this NLG. He does this thing where he is massively over to one side initially, and that side always seems to be the furthest side away from the free kick taker. Okay, so it's the free kick taker's far post, essentially. And then as the kick is being taken, he tries to gravitate himself towards the middle, and hence the other side to maybe try and close the gap, almost like he's inviting the free kick taker to take the kick where he wants them to take it. Well, we know how that ended today. We know how that could always end. Anybody could tell you this. Now, some keepers may get away with this, maybe like the likes of Allison, etc. There's certain keepers that are absolutely huge, and athletic to boot. Maybe Donnarumma as well. And so, what can happen with those guys is they might be able to actually cover that distance that is left when the referee blows his whistle and you try and clamber across as a goalkeeper. But it wasn't. It's not a great idea, I'd say, in general, and it definitely wasn't a good idea today.
No, it wasn't.
No, and we are found out here. We're found out in another few opportunities, and I think Arsenal kind of need to look at their display today, because the defense were absolutely on job, but they were needed. They were needed and called upon many times in very tough situations we shouldn't have been in.
Well, just to add to this, the defense bar one, which was Calafiori, he came off in the second half. He was actually responsible for this free kick indirectly, in the sense that Trossard is the one who brings down Dalot for the free kick in the first place, but Calafiori is the one who gives the ball away, and was beaten so often by Dalot or whoever else was on that right side so often in the first half. And Raya, where he's positioned here, by the time the ball's ready to be kicked by Fernandes, is probably standing where Calafiori is, right about here. Fernandes puts it basically in between Marino and Gabriel. So yeah, honestly, again, we can complain about 11.2 yards away, but this is what made me feel like this game was a 1-1, because I think United and Amorim would have told the players, if you can get 0-0 by half time, roughly, or get one in the first half, you're probably in this game. And that's exactly what happened. And Calafiori, who, I don't know, Rick, tell me something on Techie. So, like, France and I were going back and forth. We feel like Lewis Skelly may have been dropped for his disciplinary, the red card. No, not the red card. The yellow card against PSV.
Should have got a second.
Should have been a red.
Yeah.
To start Calafiori, what would you have done going into this game? Because obviously Calafiori started and he just had a poor performance.
So you know what? I don't think he was dropped as much as he was maybe thinking. We've just played in Europe midweek, coming into United, going to Old Trafford, and maybe a coach like Amorim would look at Lewis Skelly and see him as a weak point. Now, I think, no matter what level of football you play at, once you identify a weak point in the opposition, I think people tend to prey on it. I do believe Lewis Skelly probably has a more well-rounded set of skills to actually make that left-back position his own. But I feel perhaps he's being shielded rather than dropped per se. I guess the sort of underlying question is, would I have liked to have seen him start? And the answer is yes. But I mean, like, hindsight is amazing, isn't it? But I just feel like he adds maybe a bit more. Calafiori seems to have a bit of like he almost plays like a willing Labrador. He sort of like gravitates towards the ball positionally. I've not seen a left back like him in a long time. It just knows.
Win. He's Win the dog in a human form. Calafiori is Win.
There's a player in there though, but like I feel like
I think there's a
confidence is one-to-one ability. Sorry, France.
I think there may be a centre back in there.
Yeah.
You see, Arteta is the only person who will grab a centre back, say you're a left back now, Harry. You know, he will grab a centre mid, say you're a left back.
Yeah.
Everybody will play left back except the left back or right. It speaks for itself. It speaks for itself. We've had Kivior in that position. We've had Zinchenko again, who is another central midfielder in that position. We've had it just doesn't make. When is he going to open up his eyes? Kieran Tierney, the actual left back, barely ever plays. Yeah, he's just again. It speaks for itself, and I think, although to your point, maybe he does rest Lewis Skelly because he feels like he needs to protect him. However, you played Lewis Skelly in a Champions League match against PSV, who are our current opposition, who can knock us out of the cup, and that's the only cup that we're in. And if you don't get to at least the quarters, we know that the scrutiny from the fans is going to be quite thick. The reason being, even if, let's say, the Champions League were to be looked at as a standalone competition, people wouldn't be happy. And you get a cohort of the fans looking upon it as something of a disappointment, sort of bouncing out at that stage. However, this would be something or a view that is taken by the fans, which would be in conjunction to all the other mess that we've found ourselves in this season. And so I think it would have been the scrutiny, although completely fair, would have just been this plus an additional set of factors that people are complaining about. And again, completely fair.
Yeah.
But you don't put a player like that on the stage and then say United. And I'm not saying he didn't do that. He probably did. That's kind of the problem with this manager.
Yeah. And look, even Sky Sports in their coverage were like, yeah, look, first half, there's nothing really to talk about. They literally only spoke about the free kick and nothing else. They actually moved straight to an ad break. Honestly, the only other thing to mention, there were a few chances from Arsenal. Same old story. 31 minutes, Gabriel to Trossard, who took a crazy touch. He basically takes a touch from behind him with his heel and just holds it past the post. Was a great opportunity. Trossard had a decent game today, to be fair. Odegaard, like, again, same old story, running around in circles. He put an over the top ball to Trossard one time. Trossard found it hard to see where it was coming from. Onana claimed. And that was basically it. Then went away into half time. And Skelly comes on. And United just grew into the game. They just grew more into the game. They were getting opportunities. Like, they could have honestly been 3-4-1 up.
Yeah.
They had a big chance. Again, Calafiori problematic. It starts with Timber at first, though, because Dalot basically ends up running down the left side of the pitch where Timber should be. I think Saliba just about misses blocking that cross. And Calafiori should be with Mazraoui, who's running in back post. He's not there. Mazraoui literally takes a touch, puts in a good shot, and Raya somehow saves it. He was definitely man of the match today because that save was top tier. Xerxes had a good one as well where he flicks it. He had a little flick in. Raya, good position. And again, that was around the center of the goal. And yeah, second half was also a non-game. Like, what can we actually do? I know we're playing with Marino up front and we're not getting much from him. He had a chance in the first half too, which was decent. What would you guys do? We've got like not many games after the season, but at this point, what do you do to try and get these players to gel?
I think there are probably a couple of approaches. If I could just jump in on that, I think what the PSV game showed us is that if we are toothless side in attack, what can the coach and then in turn the players do on the pitch to really sort of compensate for the fact that our more clinical players, our biggest decision makers, and our most clinical players in front of goal, really, how we sort of mitigated the fact that they're absent. And what we were doing was we actually had more players in the channels, more players in the final third. If you go back to watch like highlights of the game, you will notice that Odegaard's position is not only advanced, that Declan Rice is pretty much ahead of everyone at every attack. Anytime, I think, do you remember when Odegaard scored? I can't remember which goal it was, but it's one essentially the ball just like rolled open to him, and all he needed to do was to bury it. And Declan Rice pointed towards the goal. I promise you, go back and watch all of the goals. Declan Rice is pretty much in an advanced position. Apart from, well, in the goal he assisted, he's the most advanced, and then he came off in the last place. I didn't see that against United, and actually, just knowing that we were playing a 3-4-3 team today, in reality, you know that's going to be a back five, a 5-3-2. So there's something in us really believing in ourselves and gambling and saying we don't really need to commit to a rigid structure. We can have the additional body, even if it's not attacker, and like an out-and-out attacker, an attacker like nominally. When we faced Forest some time ago, I think after in the post-match press conference, one of the journos asked, Spirito Santo, like, why is it you didn't play with your regular like back five? And he said, well, Arsenal don't have any strikers. And so if we know we're going to face a team with a back five, and they'll be light in midfield, they'll be light up front, is there a need for us to be traditional how we approach the game? I think that's probably the biggest thing. It's a tactical element that we should be doing differently. And like, considering we're probably not going to win much this season, if anything at all, this is a good opportunity to see what this team's made of and how we can actually approach ourselves tactically.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic point, because this guy, these are the two scorers today, obviously, but Rice today was top tier. And very early in the game, I made a comment to France being like, Rice is getting into some of those positions you're speaking about. When we look at his heat map, I've got it here. Well, today it was all over the shop, doing it all, plus scored the goal, and we'll speak about the goal in a second. But just looking at his stats, 15 final third entries, 7 times possessions won, 6 touches in opposition box, 3 duels, 1 2 shots, 1 on target, 1 goal, and 1 last man tackle. That tackle he made, Marino, in the final 10 minutes of the game, he ends up moving to CDM, which was a terrible decision because his legs were blown from doing the striker role. He gives a terrible emergency pass. Basically, I think it was to Højlund.
Gets robbed.
He's literally like in front of goal. And Rice manages to just last ditch come and hook his leg round and make that tackle. France, do you think Declan Rice making those runs that Non-Techie was speaking about, that we saw today in the first half a little bit, do you think that could be the answer? So using Marino as a bit of a decoy and getting our players making those runs in behind?
I think it does make sense. We were speaking about this while watching the game, and I think it does make sense. The problem, I think, is that we don't actually have an out-and-out 8, which means Declan Rice literally is box to box, especially because, again, part of our defensive element, especially today, was non-existent, which is the same side that Declan Rice would be running up and down. And in this, I'm talking about Calafiori. So Declan Rice has to provide both defensive cover as well as attacking cover, because Marino is not that guy. Now, having people running in the channels is very good, and I believe that is the way that you break down United. I think Richard already alluded to the fact that, in actual fact, this United team are going to play and have played a flat back 5.
Yeah, it's not
which means, yeah, exactly. Which means in their defensive shape, it's going to be very tough to break them down. They're aware of Arsenal, they're aware of their position in the league, and so they're not coming out to just take a pumping. They don't want that. So a point is great for them. That's exactly what they want. Exactly what they were going to play for. So if you're going to beat them, we need people, as Non-Techie said, in the channels. You need people in the channels. You need people to be moving around. They need to be active. They need to be either pulling people apart from their expected positions. Okay, that is in the defense. So anybody that says, I'm marking Trossard, or I'm marking Declan Rice, or I'm marking, needs to be getting pulled out of position. And if they decide that they're going to be rigid, if they make that decision that people can float about but they're not going to move, then You need to make sure that you're active. You have your passes active, ready to play a pass on the literally a split-second decision. As soon as somebody looks like they're in the middle of a channel, you hit them. And we need to keep doing it and keep firing off those shots at the keeper. We didn't really do that today. I saw a number of scenarios where we were static. They might have thrown some extra bodies forward, but we're static with probably only Declan Rice running in from deep. You can't have him doing that alone all game. It doesn't work. If we don't score and score early, his legs are going to tire out. There'll be game after game after game, and before you realize, he might pick up an injury. So Arsenal needed to be a bit more flexible with the way that they play. They needed to have some ingenuity about them today, and we needed to really be goal driven. We really needed to be goal driven. We should have taken the approach that even if we let in a goal, we'll basically pump them enough that goal won't matter. That's the kind of thing that we need to be approaching in a lot of these games, because we already have a decent defensive element, a good defensive element. If you look across our games, what we don't have is a decent attack. That defensive element is not going to save our season. What we need to be doing is kind of playing in such a way that we understand what we can approach in terms of our play and consistent performance for next season. As much as I hate to write off a season, and I'm not trying to, we kind of need to be approaching our best towards the end of the season so we know and can gauge what level we're at, essentially. And that needs to be done by picking up points, winning games, and performing at our best level. We could end up third this season.
Yeah,
we could end up third this season. We could end up fourth this season. There's still a lot of the season to go. Yeah, even fifth. There's still a lot of the season to go. I think Arteta is probably the only person who looks at it and says, yeah, well, second seems to be a given for him. So, yeah, that's my take on it, really.
Yeah, I mean, valid points there. Like, just to wrap up the highlights of that game, there's really only two more to speak about. The Rice goal, which was a fantastic goal. Basically, Timber goes down the right side of the pitch. He drops Mazarawi, drops a shoulder, moves inside and cuts the ball back to Rice, who's outside of the box on that right side, actually. Again, today he was just everywhere, all across the pitch, and whips in a great ball, finesse to the further post, posting in. Anana was never getting there. And then literally the final key moment of the game was that Bruno Fernandes could have scored about 91 minutes into the game. Ball gets cut across from Xerxes, I think it is. And Bruno, hits the ball clean. Raya somehow makes a save last ditch. I mean, he's been important in these key moments. But I actually just want to move the conversation on because the league is done. France was saying he doesn't want to think about next season. But from today's result, it will take a mathematical and, an absolute calamity from Liverpool's standpoint to not win this league. Non-techie. If you're Arteta, mathematically it's pretty much done. There's not much we can do. How do you take these next games? Like, what do you experiment with formations going into next season? Or do you focus on trying different plays in different positions? What do you do? Because at this point, or again, Champions League is still a concern, where we finish. So what would you do with the remaining games if you were in his shoes?
Yeah, just feeling my way towards an answer on that, maybe. I think where my mind goes is as the season goes on, your priorities change depending on what competitions you're still in, how likely you feel like you progress within them, and the fact that we're still in the Champions League. And it's this really perverse thought I have. Looking at the Champions League and looking at the Premier League, it would feel, as wild as it sounds, that we have more of a chance of winning the Champions League than we do to win the Premier League, right? And so you can't really take your foot off the gas. I don't think, apart from tactics, and that's the major thing, but I don't think Arteta will change. So let's assume that's set in stone. I don't think our problem is around how we approach games as much as it is about personnel. I think Arteta's waiting for Martinelli to come back fit and firing to really be a starter. He's waiting for Saka to come back. We won't get a striker. And so with that in mind, if we're going to play the same way, unfortunately, our ceiling probably is lower than it should be. That said, another perverse thought I have, for some reason, teams are either not as prepared for us within the Champions League, or maybe our play style lends itself better to it. And so I think we're capable of definitely closing out the PSV game. If we should get any of the, well, we'll get one of the Madrid teams in the next round. I think that's where we'll really be found out, if I'm going to be honest. I can't see us beating Real Madrid over 2 legs. Atletico, maybe. I think people need to really respect them and their pedigree in these competitions, and how Simeone is just like a proper master of the dark arts, and he can really know how to grind out results. And so, if I'm going to be honest, it's play the same way, with the Champions League being what we can realistically achieve, and then wait for next season, wait for new signings, and then go again.
Yeah, honestly. And it's so damning to hear that, the fact we're going to have to sit through these matches. And, you know, like looking at Rice's post-match interview, I mean, you know, him as a player, you know, he has the right mentality. Where's he at? Yeah, basically, I can't find it for some reason. But yeah, he's saying it's not over it. It's not over yet. We need to keep pushing. We are Arsenal. And we are Arsenal. And yet somehow we've just become comfortable with mediocrity, you know? And it feels like we're slipping back, in my opinion, into the latter years of Wenger, where it just becomes samey, same formation, same stubbornness, same style of players. Now, the best news to come out of the last few days is Berta, who has become our sporting director, our new sporting director. What do you guys make of that? Non-techie, let's go to you, and then we'll go to France.
In some sense, I'm really happy that we've managed to get someone who's tenured and has a bit of a CV in this position. I think even since Edu left, I think looking at this January transfer window just shows perhaps Jason Nato, who has been incumbent in that time, hasn't really shown himself to be someone who can really shift the hierarchy above them. And I think that's what this sporting director role particularly needs. Somebody who can really like take the on the pitch matters and have that holistic view and be able to lobby our leadership properly. And he's been really successful at Atletico Madrid. I think in that time, they've made major acquisitions. They've sold well. That's something we haven't historically done as well. And like have been relatively competitive with a coach who's perhaps not the most like progressive and liberal in terms of his attack and being free flowing. So on paper, it seems like a step above Edu and definitely that of Jason Ato. But let's see. I think we'll need a few transfer windows to really understand what this man's really about.
Yeah. We could do, but even in my opinion, a few transfer windows is too late. Like we need this guy to hit the ground running. And with, in my opinion, why I'm happy with this appointment, you know, more than Edu had a very big South American contingent and knowledge of that roster, having been with the Brazil national team. But Berta should bring in, you know, he's signed, been responsible for signing some big players, but also has European connections that we need to go over and go after some of the biggest targets. France, what do you make of Berta and his appointment?
I think first I'd like to pick up a little bit of where Nanteki left off with regards to Jason Ato and how, again, we look at this and there were these suggestions going around that the Arsenal board are very happy with the work of Jason Ato, and it seemed to me like not only had he not been in that position very long, because Edu probably vacated that position around December, but even if they did know sort of that this guy Edu was about to leave, and so had Ato sort of pipping up and doing bits and pieces before we even realized what was going on, has there been any evidence of what he's actually done from our end as individuals who watched the game? I think the answer is pretty simple. I think the answer is no. unless he was grooming Win the dog in the background while we were all focused on other things, I see him having done absolutely nothing. Then suggestions come out and say, actually, he's been an individual who has helped to actually lay some groundwork for what will happen in the summer. Now, this is very interesting since we were in January and we needed a player or two, and they did absolutely nothing. So I don't want to hear about any Jason Ato. I don't want to hear about, if he left today, it would make no difference to me. Now, moving on to Berta, as you guys said, a man with pedigree, a man that looks like he can actually fight a decent fight where concerned, especially when he needs to push against any sort of level of hierarchy or even against Arteta. And we need that. I feel like Edu for a long time was a yes man. It's probably how we ended up with Kai Havertz. And you need people to push against the flow of whatever the club is trying to decide. This is a sporting director that essentially sat there and had people like Simeone that must have been barking down his door at every stage where he doesn't get what he wants, etc., etc. But he seemed to be able to handle his own, but also work within the confines of, the situation he was in. The only thing I hope is, as much as we're all sort of happy, and this is the individual that I did want amongst the options that we had or Arsenal had already picked, I only hope that he doesn't turn into a yes man, because the Kroenkes are very good at saying, well, we don't want you to keep coming to us asking us for money. So we'll do one of two things. We'll either put an amount of cash on your desk and you can go away, don't come back to me for 5 years, or they will say, we'll pay you handsomely to shut your mouth. Just sit there, don't ruffle any feathers, don't talk too big. Otherwise, if you do, you might be out. So hopefully he does come in with the same backbone he kind of had at Letty, and we'll see how it goes. Hopefully he'll be able to do some work, some magic.
Yeah, I mean, let's see how it goes. That's all we can do. And hope this team can pick up wins along the way, is what's seeming like is a consensus. But yeah, the same old boring football, lots of possession, not many shots on target, and not many goals, other than it seemingly in the Champions League is what the deal is. We have PSV on Wednesday. We're going to do that. Quickly, just before that, though, I find this hilarious. Just as I'm on Twitter, this is hilarious.
Show us.
So there was obviously the controversy about the 11.2 yards that the wall was for that Bruno Fernandes free kick. My screen should be sharing now. I don't know if you can see it.
It's probably just loading up.
Is it loading?
Is it the Christian Eriksen thing?
Yes. Christian Eriksen basically said, he was asked about Fernandez's goal, and he's basically like, yeah, well, very fortunate that at least the wall seemed about 15 meters away, 50 from us. So
it was far. Even watching it looked far gone.
It looked far. And we could actually see when Arsenal had a free kick in a similar position from an Ethan Nwaneri progression in the attack in the second half. It was funny because United players must have seen or heard this at half time, because then the United players were telling the ref, we're way too far back. Like, our wall is way too far back. Like, look at how many yards. They were really protesting with the ref with Anthony Taylor to be like, look, we're way too far back. This line is not 10 yards. So
can I say something?
Yeah.
There are a number of faults here. David Raya definitely at fault.
Yeah.
However, I don't want to keep laboring this point. Anthony Taylor is supposed to be an experienced referee. How does this happen? We're still talking about referees and PGMOL even now. Again, I don't think it's the reason why we lost, but there is a factor where it's harder to bend the ball up and over a wall the closer it is to you. That's a fact. Yeah. It's also a fact that it's supposed to be about 10 yards back from the ball. How does this happen?
Yeah.
I'm not really sure.
It's a joke thing. We didn't even lose, but it feels like it. And you're right. I don't know how we end up at that situation. But again, as you said, it's not the reason why this game feels like a loss. 1-1 against United, this 14th place United is a loss. Like that draw is a loss. And yeah, again, this club really need to show something. Yet again, we're begging the club to show some kind of fight. I did a match preview for PSV, I think it was, and I was looking at their financial club statement. I don't know if you saw this, non-techie, but the final few sentences just before I wrap up and we look towards the next game. The final few sentences of the Arsenal financial statement, you can find it on their website, sums up this club. Consecutive qualifications for the UEFA Champions League for 2024-25 season for both men's and women's teams represent a positive continuation of the club's progress. And we look forward to an exciting end to the 2024-2025 season. The exciting end to this season, the only excitement is that we got Berta and Sidemen raised 4.5 million. That's the most excitement Arsenal can ever see. At least somebody that supports Arsenal ended up in Wembley, because this club really show, what success is and what progress is to them, and what an exciting end to the season is. That statement was made after going out of all of the cups, barring the Champions League. And that statement shows you that being in it is what progress is. And we need somebody. Here's to hoping at least, we get the real Italian out of Berta to at least play that mediator role, because I feel like the sporting director role, as France alluded to, you need to be able to manage the manager and their expectations, but also challenge the board and who holds the purse strings to ensure you can get what's best for the club. So what do you guys make of that statement there, non-Turkey and then France?
It's a fairly corporate statement that doesn't say much, I'm going to be honest. What you could do is you could invite different groups of people to write that statement. If you ask fans to write that statement, it'll be very different to asking Josh Kroenke or Vilay to write it, It sounded like a summary of like financial reports. Like, yes, if we qualify for the Champions League in consecutive season, fantastic for the club's health in terms of finances. But what matters to us is like leveraging that. Like, what does it mean? It has to translate into something. Otherwise, there's the fantastic club the other side of Seven Sisters Road. It's in the best position in the world. But everyone in football will tell you that they are not a club, they are a business. And unfortunately, I think we are seeing our club shift towards that end.
Yeah. Like sort of non-techie said, we're aware of the other club, Chicken and Ball FC. They've also got a seedy, slimy business owner. We're not Tottenham fans. We know that. We know sort of how Arsenal fans view Tottenham, and generally we should be happy with whatever state they're in. But I look at their owner and just think it's exactly what we don't want in football. It's exactly what we don't want in football. These kind of sort of GTA businessmen, the kind you find in Grand Theft Auto 4, they're just slimy. And we have a set of owners, I feel, who don't care that much about the football club. As we saw, they used Arsenal Football Club as collateral for extra business that they were running in the States, which means essentially if they default on their loan that was given to them in the States, then whatever bank or consortium of financial institutions lent them the money, they would come and take Arsenal Football Club. And they could do whatever they want with that. They could break it apart and sell it by the piece, by the yard. They could do all of that.
Bro,
And
they'll come for Arteta, man, in the night, man.
Hopefully they do. Take him and win the dog. But this is sort of what is a danger for us, which is why a manager that comes to needs to understand the lay of the land that he's in. So when these owners part with 700 million, you shouldn't sit there and think, they're going to give you another 700 million in no time at all. That's idiocy. And so this is one of the reasons why I feel like somebody like Berta is incredibly important to
Mm.
really, if he is worth his salt, to really come in, make sure that every purchase and every outgoing basically hits its maximum potential, so that we get the best out of everything. I will remind people about Arteta's 8 good signings in 31 acquire, purchases of players. That's abysmal. You'd fail any exam doing that. So we really need that structure. And that comment, to round this off, that Arsenal Football Club made regarding the Champions League at the bottom of that sort of financial statement is a reflection of the business's outlook on Arsenal Football Club. And Arsenal Football Club has become nothing more than a business. As we know, there are bonuses to be paid out if you get to the Champions League. There are even more bonuses on top of that to be paid out if you win. And those bonuses will be substantial, whether you win the Champions League or the Premier League. Those bonuses will be substantial.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you manage to get top 4, some of these players may or may not get a bonus. But those bonuses are going to be a lot slimmer if you just get top 4 and just get in the Champions League, especially versus the amount that will come in from the fans that actually sit in the stadium and the fans that watch around the world. You need to remember as well, certain people watch the Champions League just to watch the Champions League. They don't care about what team's playing, especially during the latter stages. They don't care. So people tune in, and then the TV rights money comes in, and then Arsenal get a nice slice of that, plus the bonus that they get for just being in the next stage of the competition. So it is very lucrative for us to do that. Very. It's not as lucrative for us to win. So we need to be careful of these owners, of these managers that come in, managers flounder around and sort of stroke their own ego every day by hiring ridiculous players and other coaching staff and whoever who's not going to do anything. And these owners who don't care about any of the winning whatsoever, who literally are just happy to be there in the top 4 spots, whatever's going to earn them the most money, while peddling merch every week. So
It is what it is. Look, and yeah, great points made there by the two of you, and I think that's the main thing. If you want to change that wording from progress to success, start winning trophies, and your business side that you care about so much will be flourishing. Trust me, Liverpool winning this season, FSG will be going for all the targets we'll be going for. Man City will be going for the targets we're going for. Hey, who knows? Maybe Nottingham Forest, if they get in the Champions League, can be competing with us. Don't get it twisted. Bruno Guimaraes went to Newcastle. Buendia went to Villa. Let's not get it twisted. We're not above any of these teams in terms of getting players. So here's to hoping Berta can be the difference, and we look towards PSV on Wednesday. Well, I guess it's a bit of a non-match in a way, but let's do lineup builder and close out with predictions. Taking us to 50 minutes. So lineups, obviously, we have a very convincing win in the first leg, 7-1. Don't know what this ad is. 7-1. How would you guys line up for this game? Would you go with heavy rotation? How would you line up? Let me share screen again.
we can't see the builder, but I think at this point it's got to be pretty much to say we don't have that many options.
I was thinking, it would probably be a good idea to start with today's squad and then pick it apart. And then even then, as I said it, I'm like, it's pretty much. We started the pod thinking about whether Lewis Skelly could have started.
That would have been my thing here. I reckon he should have. I reckon Mars Lewis Skelly has a much better defensive output than anything Calafiori has presented since he's come. Much better. Then attacking wise, he probably doesn't get as forward as much. However, Lewis Skelly can control midfield in that left position, which makes him an effective stalwart, if you like, in that position. So he can either drift forward when he needs to, or kind of sit there and try and stop any balls coming back too far on the break. Although we have seen him sort of trip players over in recent
Okay.
times, grab players around the neck. But I think he's a smart lad. He can learn from those
Yeah.
scenarios.
Hold.
All right, let's go for it then. You said start with today's team, Raya or Neto. Neto can play.
No,
Raya.
Raya,
definitely right.
you need to take this seriously. I know you didn't mean this, but I think it's in most people's conscience like this is essentially a dead tie. And it's like a foregone conclusion that Arsenal have gone to the next round. There's a complacency that I don't believe like we can even afford to set into our side. So I do believe Raya does need to start. Like this is not charity.
No. Back four. Now Francis makes a point. Do you play him in his actual position instead of his square peg round hole position at left back, which he's doing pretty damn well at. He's doing very well at. Or do you go with Calafiori or even KT? KT's there.
If you wanted, you could go KT and then put Lewis Skelly in midfield. At the end of the day, Marino is not great. He's not great in either the striker or the left mid position. So you could take him out.
Okay. Non-techie, what would you go for? Left back.
Give me Lewis Skelly again,
Lewis Skelly.
Yeah, I was actually really like, against PSV when he lashed out the second time with the late challenge. I was disappointed because I'm like, no matter what level of football you're at, once you're on the yellow, you just know. You just need to stand up your man. Don't dive in. Let him make the mistake.
I see people making this excuse about he's young and no.
Miss me with that. Yeah.
We know in every level of football you don't do that. In every level of football, you will give away a foul if you do that. And in every level of football, you're in danger of getting a yellow card if you commit a foul in that situation. And 2 yellows equals a. This is not about young versus old or whatever. I just said when it came to me, I just said he's a smart lad and he'll learn. Like
he will.
He probably lashed out because of a bit of frustration or whatever the case may be. But you know not to do that. So you're learning the hard way now. You know better. You just didn't do better.
And the game was at that time. I feel like it wasn't any like 5-1. Yeah,
there was no need. You know what I mean? There was no need to be doing that. Like,
it's a conversation.
Exactly, it's a conversation. All right, rest of the back four. The back two we're keeping the same, assuming we're going with the narrative. We should still take it serious.
They should all just be the same, really.
Well, no, there's a debate at right back. Timber, who's played a lot of injury, a lot of games post his injury. Ben White or Timber?
I go White. I really go White. I feel like White is ready to start a game. I think also like we forget. Like, I don't know how he's managed this. Timber's come back from an ACL injury.
Yes. Yeah. So you could. Yeah. You could.
I just feel like, or even if you start Timber again, here's my FIFA knowledge. You just maybe like manage his minutes and then take him off and then introduce Ben White into it.
That's what I was thinking, but yeah, Josh is called Benjamin.
You see, it's not Ben.
Sorry, I read
Ben. I don't know how that became a thing.
Partey in the DM.
Yeah.
He had a pretty average to just non-existent game today. Left and right 8. Who are we going left 8?
They pick themselves. Declan Rice and
Declan Rice. Odegaard.
Like, let's not forget as well, I expect there to be heavy rotation. And you can rotate from any time. Like, there's no need to force the issue here. These players need to understand how to play together. Their chemistry needs to go up because right now they're not really firing on all cylinders. Those cylinders are the cylinders needed to go even further in the Champions League.
Agreed. All right. Well, the front three actually poses some questions though. Let's do this quick and get score predictions before rounding up. Martinelli was back in the squad today. So that throws a spanner in the works. Marino, does he go up top? And then out left, you have Trossard. You could play Tierney. Tierney came on today and basically played left wing.
I personally think
Trossard number 9 even.
Trossard in the middle is what I think. Then Martinelli and Ranieri decide for me.
Okay.
KT can come on later.
Non-techie.
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
I think Lewis Kelly has played quite a lot of games as well, so Tierney could come on for him earlier on in the match. And if you want a little bit later, you could take off Martinelli, put KT in his place, and then put Calafiori on for at left back, basically.
Okay.
Just to mix it up. At the end of the day, we're up. Calafiori maybe needs a bit of a run out. He can make mistakes in that game that you don't want him making in other games. It's a good chance for you to see whether he can actually sustain the level of pressure that is required in the Champions League. My answer in that position will be no, but hey, go on.
Would you put Tierney out on the left wing?
Not right now, Martinelli. I think Martinelli needs that game time.
Makes sense.
KT's not even going to be here next season, unfortunately. So although I want him to play as much as possible because he's a proper left back, I think we need Martinelli for sure.
Yeah. Well,
for sure.
These are the lineups, people. We've gone with fully strong team, our strongest team. With Martinelli coming back into the fold. Back four is pretty much the same, minus Timber, Raya in goal, Partey, CDM, Odegaard and Rice as the 8s, Ranieri out on the right, Trossard down the middle though as our 9, and Martinelli out on the left, which should get him some minutes in the legs. Let us know if you agree with that lineup and let us know what lineups you would go with down below. And then lastly, to round up, score predictions for the second leg of the Champions League, which should see us through already anyway, should see us through to the quarterfinals against one of the Madrids. Non-techie, what are you going for?
2-1 Arsenal.
2-1 Arsenal. France, what are you saying?
Exactly the same was going to be my answer, 2-1.
2-1.
And I think they need to be working on their attack this match, which is why I put these people in. The same guys are going to be going into the next Champions League for the most part, next Champions League game after this. They need to work on their tactics. They need to work on their sharpness. They don't necessarily have to run themselves ragged this match. But in that first half, they need to implement an attacking, winning, forward-moving strategy.
Yeah, agreed. So you've both gone 2-1. I'm gonna go 4-1. I'm just hoping there's more open play due to the format of the Champions League.
Yeah.
But at home, so I think we'll concede. We've been conceding at home. Away, we've somehow been better. But I reckon we could get goals and exploit the space. Let us know what you think down in the comments, what you think the score will be in the second leg of the Champions League, and also your lineup predictions. Non-techie and France, appreciate it as always. Another NLG pod. And yeah, people, we'll catch you in a little bit, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. Catch you, man, in a bit.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.